Welcome back. Before we begin, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment. When you do, it helps my channel grow. All comments are welcome. I look forward to your feedback. And now, Chad Fury and the Dragon Song, Chapter 4, Get a Gun. I woke to sunlight shining into my eyes. The glare was painful. I rolled over and fell onto something hard. It was a minute or so before I realized where I was. I was in my car, somewhere. I was lying on top of my shirt and cell phone on the floorboard of the back seat. There was an awful smell. The smell was me. I opened the car door and stumbled out. I grabbed my shirt, keys, wallet, and cell phone from off of the floorboards. The disorientation lifted and I saw that I was standing in the dorm parking lot. The sun had just risen to the top of the buildings, and it was too early for hardly anyone to be outdoors. I put on my shirt and hurried toward my dorm room. As I reached the door of the dorm building, I stopped. I wondered if I should call the police. If I did call, what would I tell them? Would I tell them I had been drugged, abducted by a group of women, witches, or I don't know what, and tortured for hours on end? Would they believe any of it? How much of my story did I even believe? I unbuttoned my shirt and looked at my chest. There was a cut across the left side of my chest. I saw that my wrists were badly bruised where the handcuffs had been. My ankles ached, and they were bruised too. I smelled like a sewer, and I probably looked even worse. I took my cell phone and started to dial 911. But then I realized I couldn't even tell anyone where all of this had happened. I didn't know where I'd been taken. I had passed out on the trip back. I couldn't even guess how far I'd been driven. I knew the address of the house where I met Lisa, but that's all. And that probably wasn't even her house. I redialed the cell phone number Lisa had given me. I swallowed hard and held the phone up to my ear. A second later, I heard 3 ascending tones and an automated voice saying,
"The number you dialed is not a working number. Please check the number and dial again."
I had nothing. I went inside the dorm and slipped quietly up the stairs to the second floor and then down the hall to my dorm room. I went into my room as quietly as possible. Kevin was asleep and snoring. I crept into the bathroom. I took off my clothes and put them in the trash. They were so filthy I couldn't imagine trying to wash them. I tied the trash can liner in a knot so I could take my clothes to the trash dumpster later. I looked at myself in the mirror. There was dried blood under my nose, at the corners of my mouth, and around my ears. I turned on the shower and stepped inside. I never had a better feeling shower in my life. I allowed the water to beat down on my face and nourish my aching skin as it ran down my body and carried the filth down the drain. I opened my mouth and drank the water streaming from the shower head. The water was tepid, but I didn't care. I was so very thirsty that it just didn't matter. I looked at the dragon tattoo on my arm. It disgusted me. As I turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, I felt hunger and fatigue waging a war inside of me. Hunger was winning the battle. When I exited the bathroom, I saw Kevin sitting up on the edge of the bed. He yawned and spoke. "Dude, when did you get in? I've never known you to be gone this long." I put my arms behind my back in an effort to hide the bruises on my wrists. I hoped he would not notice my ankles. I replied to Kevin, "I just got in and took a shower. It's no big deal, just one night." Kevin shook his head. "Chad, you're messed up. You mean 2 nights. This is Monday morning, not Sunday." "Stop fooling around, Kevin. It's Sunday." Kevin pulled out his smartphone and showed me the date on the display. "No, dude, it's Monday. Do I need to plan an intervention?" I shook my head. "I'm okay, and I don't want to talk. I'm going to the cafeteria. I need breakfast." Kevin laid back down and rolled over in bed. I grabbed some clean clothes and dressed as quickly as I could. The walk to the cafeteria did me some good. The fresh air and sun seemed healing. I needed to be out in the open where I could see everything around me. The trees and grass seemed somehow more secure than being inside four walls. All of the sounds were crisp in my ears. I never remembered noticing so many little sounds like the insects and rustling leaves. I heard a dog howling in the distance. I seemed to know what it was saying. I knew it was a male declaring his territory, stating, "I am here. This area is mine." When I arrived at the cafeteria, I could smell the food before I went inside. The pungent aroma of coffee nearly knocked me over as I swung open the door and stepped through. I inhaled and knew immediately what was on the buffet line: scrambled eggs, pork sausage, turkey sausage, bacon, pancakes, syrup, and cereal. I stopped and wondered how I could do that. I've never been able to sort out all of those smells before. I inhaled again and caught the scent of perfumes, cologne, perspiration, and stale cigarette smoke. With a quick scan of the room, I could even tell which smell belonged to which person. And it was all just far too strange. I decided drugs must still be in my system, and I was imagining all of this. I filled my tray from the buffet and took a seat in the far corner with my back to the wall. I sat facing the door and tried to observe everything in the room. I ate like I hadn't eaten in days because, well, I hadn't eaten since Saturday morning. As I ate, I thought about everything that had happened to me since Friday. The more I thought about it, the less I trusted my memories. My mind had to be playing tricks on me. I must have been drugged from the very start. That's the only explanation. How else could I account for all of this? The dragon tattoo moving, the strange sounds the women made, the contortions of my body while I was chained. Maybe none of it had happened. Maybe the whole thing was a wild, drug-induced trip. I couldn't explain the bruises on my wrists and ankles, but maybe there was a reasonable explanation for that too, if I could just come up with it. I settled that much in my mind. I had made a deliberate choice to believe I had been drugged, and nothing I remembered since Friday had actually happened. I finished breakfast and headed back toward the dorm. My developmental biology class would start in a couple of hours. I needed my books. On the walk back, the campus was looking more like what I was accustomed to seeing. The campus grounds were full of people milling about and talking on their way to somewhere. I found myself going out of my way to avoid people, staying out of their paths. I jumped at the sound of footsteps behind me. I looked suspiciously at people headed in my direction. I studied every face for signs of malevolence. As I walked, I thought about escape routes. Which way would I run? Where could I duck and hide? My heart raced and my paranoia grew. There was no way I was going to be able to sit in a room full of other people. I kept muttering to myself, "You're okay, Chad. It never happened. It wasn't real, Chad." But I couldn't reassure myself. The pounding of my heart in my ears was telling me I had a need to protect myself, to be safe. The compulsion became overwhelming. I thrust my right hand in my pants pocket and felt for my car keys. "Good," I muttered, and I started off toward my car at a full run. I don't ever remember running harder. I poked my legs against the sidewalk as hard as I could. The scenery raced past my peripheral vision. The concrete ended and my stride changed as my feet connected with the softer earth. I raced on. A 4-foot hedge stood between me and the next set of buildings. I pushed on toward the hedge. My brain unconsciously made all of the necessary calculations, and when I reached just the right point in front of the shrubbery, my muscles propelled me up and forward. My legs scissored, one in front and one behind as I sailed over the hedge. My trailing leg pulled forward, bent at the knee, and cleared the obstacle like a professional hurdler. I didn't stop running. I raced around the trees standing in my path. I dodged people like they were pylons on an obstacle course. Soon, I was at my car. I stopped and thought about what just happened. I had sprinted farther than I ever remembered, and I wasn't winded. The entire run felt like nothing more than a brisk walk in the park. "Okay," I said aloud. "That's not drugs. That was real. So what the freaking heck happened to me?" One thing I knew for certain is that I didn't want to be around other people. I put the key in the door of my black Ford Interceptor. The car had been a gift from my father when I entered college. Now that my father was gone, the car meant so much more to me than anything else I owned. That's why my heart sank so deeply when I opened the door and the smell from my last ride hit me in the face. I wasn't sure how I could ever get the stink out of my baby. Using air fresheners would be like throwing flowers on a dead cow. I got in and started the car. I rolled down all of the windows. It was only a short drive to the outdoor and hunting store in Oklahoma City's Bricktown Shopping Center. When I got to the store, it was just opening. I went straight to the gun counter and selected a Glock G22 40 caliber pistol and bullets. It took longer to pay for it and submit the registration papers than to pick it out. The clerk wouldn't let me have the gun until the background check was completed, which took about an hour with their automated system. When I got to the car, I took the gun out of its plastic carrying case, loaded it, and tucked it securely between my belt and my spine. I sat for a while trying to convince myself that I felt better and safer now, but the truth was that I didn't. I still felt like I was being followed and that everyone around me was a potential enemy. I remembered Afghanistan. The Army made me spend a year there. I was in only one firefight that year. It shook me up a little, but I had been trained for it. Also, I wasn't alone back then. My buddies from the unit were with me. We had each other's back. If anything happened, I knew we could count on each other. This was different. I was alone and I was vulnerable. I finally put my finger on it. I felt violated. Something intimate and personal had been ripped out from deep inside of me, and I was different now. What I needed was a friend. I pulled out my cell phone and found Ronnie Ferguson's number. He was my best friend in the Army. I didn't know what I would say to him, but I needed to talk.